I'm Randy Simmons for Eye on Arts. Today we're going to be visiting the Museum of the American Quilter Society. My guest is Judy Schwender.
Hi, Randy.
Hello, Judy. How are you today?
I'm fine.
Great. You have a wonderful, beautiful quilt that I wanted to start out
Yes.
with, and it's right behind us. And this is the 2006 winner of the
Best
Quilter
show.
Show last year, and it's called the Sedona Rose.
Sedona Rose by Schwender of Payson, Arizona.
And what's really cool is like two quilts in one, because we're standing in the front side.
Yes.
And then there's a back side, which we're going to look at in just a
Yeah.
moment. But do you want to give us a little bit of the technical history and miscellaneous information on this quilt?
Absolutely.
I want to step back.
Okay. Sharon was inspired by a very small piece of lace, and she really drew her motifs and her quilting designs from a small piece of lace. One of the things that distinguishes this quilt is that it was quilted by a long arm machine. Sharon used a long arm machine. In a regular home sewing machine, if you're doing the machine quilting, you move the quilt back and forth to get the design. On a long arm machine, the machine itself is on ball bearings and the whole machine moves. The quilt stays stationary and the machine moves. And Sharon has done tiny bubble work where each little bubble is maybe 1/8 of an inch. And to do that with this whole machine being on ball bearings, she has exceptional control of this machine, and she uses it to the most incredible degree. There's these gorgeous plumed motifs with a diamond section. She has more bubbles, beautiful plumes out in the green. It's just a wealth of machine quilting.
The colors are absolutely brilliant. I mean, this almost glows in the dark. The colors are so intense.
Yes, and she used both commercial cottons and some that she dyed herself. Something else that you might notice is on each edge we have, and it might be a little tricky to see, but there's cording, and each of these is cording, and it's worked into the binding, and that is actually a result of Sharon's background. She made bridal and pageant wear gowns. And all of the techniques that she utilized in that sort of, in that business came to the fore in creating this wonderful quilt.
And a lot of people are wondering, how long does it take to make a quilt like this?
Oh boy. Now I know a hand quilted quilt and hand pieced, hand applique quilt can take over 2,000 hours. My guess is this one probably also took her close to that because of the heavy, dense quilting. And then when you see the back, and you see what's on the back, and we talk about the back, I think you'll understand why it took her so long.
And to put it in perspective, that 2,000 plus hours, I mean, that took place probably over a year and a half.
Right.
At least a year and a half.
Yeah, because if you work full time at a 40-hour a week job for 50 weeks a year, that's 2,080 hours. So I think, yeah, a year, more than a year. And of course, they're not probably working on it 8 hours a day. Most people, I know when I machine quilt for too long, I get so stiff up in here that I have to quit for a while.
Let's check out the back, because it's equally as interesting.
It is, it definitely is.
And this is the flip side of the Sedona Rose.
This is the back side of Sedona Rose, Randy. And it's an incredible achievement. She has, Sharon applied 130,000 Swarovski crystals to the back side of this quilt.
Say that again. What kind of crystals?
Swarovski.
Like
you swear off skiing?
Swear off skiing.
Swarovski.
Swarovski. Got it.
Swarovski crystals. And these are heat set crystals. Very easy to use, actually. And one of the things that I am particularly excited about is this way, with a lighter background, people can really see the formal design, and it has a real Baroque feel to it that I think is only emphasized, by the crystals.
And tell us about the double sleeves at the top.
The double sleeves. Well, the top sleeve, we're using the top sleeve to hang the quilt, but this one below it, some quilt shows have a size where they tell you your quilt sleeve has to be at such and such a height, so that because that's how high their quilt poles are from the floor. So she has 2 sleeves. There's no crystals under that sleeve, so I'm just leaving it on for now. But we got it hung. It's a heavy quilt, so we don't have it up all the time because I imagine it'll stretch a little bit as we have it hanging here now. So
I didn't think about the stretching factor.
yeah.
So and how would you clean a quilt like this?
Well, now this quilt would be tough, especially this side, because of the crystals. But all the quilts in the collection, one of the things that we do is we don't wet clean any quilts. We vacuum them. And
Lay them on the floor?
No. No.
That doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way. You don't get out your shop vac and vacuum your quilt. There's nylon or fiberglass screening that you can buy by the yard at a hardware store.
Okay.
You buy about so much screening, and you seal off the edges or bind the edges with masking tape or twill tape, and you lay the quilt out on a table that is covered with clean sheets. Lay it flat. Lay the screening on top, and then on most people's vacuum cleaners there's a hard-headed attachment for vacuuming upholstery.
Right.
You use that tool, and then on the wand there's a little slidey thing that opens up a little hole on the wand, the vacuuming wand.
Okay.
You open it up, and that reduces the suction slightly. And then you very gently, you don't rub through the screen, you hold it about, ½ inch above, and you just go slowly up and down in the screen area.
Interesting. So I take it you try not to. Oh, I touched the quilt.
That's right, you did.
That's not good. I got to pull up a little bit,
Yeah,
so I don't do that again.
I think so.
And no one's allowed to touch the quilt.
No,
no. We should point that out.
Because you have so much oil, and even if you just wash your hands, you have so much oil on your hands. And some people, I've known people that want to lift the quilts with, the temple piece of their glasses.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but temple pieces, you sweat, so you don't have oil
just
and
as
so
much
forth.
oil there
Exactly.
as there is in your hands.
So we have to preserve all our quilts for the future, because especially the best of show winners, because they really are a part of quilt history. So we want to preserve the quilts for the future, and one of the ways we have to do that is by, unfortunately, asking our visitors not to touch the quilts.
And if somebody were to come in and visit the Quilt Museum, they're not allowed to photograph the quilts either.
Oh, no. I would say the primary reason for that is copyright issues, because, for instance, Sharon Schwender, she owns a copyright for this quilt for her lifetime. And copyright is a very, very big issue in the world of quilting today. When we take the quilt into our collection, we have our artists sign an agreement that allow us to use the quilts for, promoting the museum, as we're doing, in this video. But for instance, we don't allow cell phone use because people come in with their cell phones and take
I
pictures.
saw those signs. So is that new?
That's kind of new.
Policy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, people talking on cell phones is kind of annoying at a museum.
That's
A
interesting.
little bit. If somebody's talking about a grocery list, and you're looking at this quilt.
Right. Well, I didn't think about the use of cell phones and the cameras. So you're absolutely right. People can take photos of it still.
Yeah.
It's a lot like art, because I know that artists, when they sell a piece of artwork, they still own what that piece looks like,
Right.
even though that piece belongs to somebody else.
The physical, whoever bought it owns the physical piece, but the intellectual property belongs to the artist, and that's for their lifetime.
Great. So they could actually sell this on a postcard if they wanted to.
We do produce postcards and mugs and so forth that we sell in our gift shop. But when we do that, we request specific permission from the artist and tell them what use we would make of it. And they can turn us down if they want. Usually some of them are just delighted. They're just happy. So.
Well, let's go take a look at some other quilts.
Yeah.
Great. This quilt that we're looking at now is by a Paducah artist.
Yes, this is by Carol Fowlert, and she recently moved to Paducah and has Briar Patch Studios down on 5th and Harrison. And the museum is very pleased to have this. This is called Reflections 3, and it's from the 1990s. And this is one of her pleated pieces. And each one of these vertical sections is, like for instance here, it's gold and yellow on one side, and it's green on the other. So each one is sewn so you can see both sides, and then she pleats them and pushes the pleats to either one side or the other. And this is, her inspiration for this piece came from a gorge that she visited when she was in Australia.
That's really interesting. It's a very beautiful piece, very colorful. What I found interesting was that the quilt actually changes as you go from one side to the other. I wonder if our camera person can catch that as you move from the left to the right, you see that the colors do shift a bit.
Carol's really good at using these bright colors.
Well, it looks absolutely gorgeous. How many pieces do you own of Carol's?
Oh dear, let me think now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe it's 5, yes.
And do you have them all out on display, or they rotate?
They rotate. They rotate. And when we have multiple pieces by an artist, we try to rotate them because the quilts do need to rest. And not that it's hard work to hang in a gallery, but they do get dusty, and they just need to be, all the weight needs to come off that top edge for a while.
They get stretched out, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that does happen. So, yeah, so we rotate through Carol's quilts and quilts by other artists.
Let's visit this one that's right behind us.
Oh, this wonderful quilt. Now this is by an artist who's from, the piece depicts a place in Hawaii. And this is by Ruth B. McDowell, and it's called Nepali. And she's really a master at manipulating value to create depth. And she understands that the eye will combine similar value sections to form one section, but that keeps the eye's interest. So this whole section in here, for instance, might have 20 different darks in it, but it helps your eye work to stay involved in the piece. And it was very fun because one day I was walking through the galleries and there was a man came around the corner and said, "Oh my gosh, I've been there." And he went, "Honey, honey," and he called for his wife and he goes, "We were there." And it turns out that yes, they were there in Hawaii. He recognized this place. I thought that was absolutely excellent.
What is happening up in this top right-hand corner? Is that some kind of a dyeing? It almost looks like calligraphy is the reason why I'm asking.
Well, actually one of the things that Ruth does is she works with patterned fabrics. So many of our artists are doing their own dyeing, and so they have solid color fabrics, but she works with a lot of commercially printed fabrics, and on most of her quilts, as you'll notice in the lower corner, there's a frame that comes up and then goes across and back down, but it doesn't go across the bottom, so it's more like a proscenium that you see in a theater, and that just happens to be a patterned fabric. But she builds these frames that are a little bit ambiguous, so that lets the viewer enter the space that she's created. She does a lot with these almost Norse-looking boats. So.
It's a really interesting landscape, and what's funny is you're talking about all the patterns that she uses. I mean, if you were to just have a pile of these patterns, you wouldn't think that these would go together.
Right, but they do.
But they do, and she's made these patterns work very well together to create this very beautiful landscape.
Yeah, your eye will blur things together. Your eye tries to find the lightest and darkest areas where the value contrast is, and she understands how to work that.
I tell my drawing students that too.
Okay, see, and the design elements that work in a quilt are going to work in painting, in drawing, in photography, in graphic art. You know, design elements and they're the same. They're the same no matter what the medium. Just because we work in fabric doesn't mean that quilt artists aren't artists.
Interesting that this is one of my many visits here, and I mean each time I'm just amazed at how these aren't quilts, that these are.
No.
I mean they're paintings.
They are. They're paintings in fabric. And one of the things I think that the artists love is that, I mean, you don't normally see an artist take a tube of paint and squish it in their hands and go like this. I mean, that's what potters do. But quilters like fabric. They go in a fabric shop and they know what cotton feels like, but you'll see them walking through and they're just touching all the fabric. It's just what quilters do.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and everybody, like you relate to quilts, you know, everyone relates to quilts because we sleep under something at home. A lot of us have a quilt. We all wear cloth, you know, so it's other than artists, how many people actually work with oil paint? You know, to artist oils. Or how many people work with marble, like sculpture-wise? How many people do lithography with a lithographic stone? Not many, but everybody has, you know, textiles in their life.
Everybody can relate to that.
Yeah, so it's a known factor.
So when the quilters come into town for Quilters Week, are they always?
Well, and we have a lot of volunteers in our galleries during Quilt Week, and we do have to kind of ride herd on our
Smack their
visitors.
hands, right.
Yeah, And they're real pleasant unless somebody persists, and then they get firm.
I bet those cattle prods work really well. Kapow.
We don't sell those at the
Shoot
gift
a
shop
little
yet.
voltage into them and keep them in other quilts.
Well, you know, it's funny because that's tough because it's just natural to want to touch
Yeah,
the
it
quilt.
is.
So what I suggest is if you're having trouble, you put your hands in your pocket. You know,
Okay.
just like when little kids, when you take them, you know, someplace, like to the department store or something in the glassware department, you know, you say, put your hands in your pockets, and you see the little kids walk. And they almost don't know what to do if they can't have their hands out. So, and adults really aren't that different.
Well, I'm going to walk over to the next wall with my hands in my pocket and check out these next few quilts.
Okay.
My hands are in my pockets, by the way. Can I take them out now?
You can take them out, but don't let your elbow hit the quilt.
Remove, pull forward.
There
okay.
you go. Now you're all right.
Now we're okay.
Yeah.
We are in a special section of the Quilters Museum,
Yes.
And
Oh Wow Miniature Quilt
the
Collection.
miniature quilt collection, and these are miniature quilts.
And the quilt right behind us, 50 Birds, is a good example. It's by Pat Hawley. I can't remember the exact size, but it's something like about 10 inches by 14 inches, very tiny. And one of the qualifications for a miniature quilt is that it be to scale. So if you can't just be a small quilt, it has to be totally miniature to scale. And she actually has used her machine, everything's done by machine on this quilt, and there are actually 50 birds machine appliqued on this tiny quilt. There's this really cute peacock right here. Actually, there's 4 peacocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and they're all to scale. Some are applique. She has applique and piecework. And then here's another miniature quilt. This one's by Carol Fowler, and this is actually a whole cloth quilt. She did this design on her computer, then printed the design on a single piece of cloth, and then she machine quilted it. And that's in the whole cloth tradition, which is a very legitimate tradition within the quilt world.
Computer assisted.
Well, whole
quilt
cloth.
making. Okay.
One piece of cloth. So you have Black Eyed Susan by Susan Jackson. This is very tiny stitching. And one thing that you have to do too when you're doing a miniature is your thread has to be very fine. If you use regular weight thread, it basically looks like rope in this scale. Mm-hmm. So they're using very, very fine thread. In many cases, they're using silk thread because you can get a nice fine thread. And this quilt is absolutely phenomenal. This is Pineapple Flambe by Judy Spears, and this is the single block in this one. This piece has about 72 pieces in it.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can see that there's a lot of work in this one. It's a foundation pieced quilt, and that involves a base fabric and your eye fabric. That gets sewn on, flipped back. The next piece gets sewn onto that and flipped back. And it's all sewn onto a foundation.
So just because they're small doesn't mean that not a lot of time went into these.
Not a lot of time. And if you think about it, if you are making a full-size quilt and you're off by 1/8 of an inch, somebody might not notice. The old saying goes, if you're driving by in a car, if you can't see it when you're driving by in a car, nobody's going to care.
Right.
If you're off 1/8 of an inch in this,
Everyone's going to see it.
It's going to stick out like terrible, like a sore thumb. But Judy also did this quilt. This is the 2006 Benartex Best Miniature Award quilt, and this is called Pineapple Surprise. And if you look, she also did pineapple blocks, but she took a square and stretched it into a diamond. So she did basically the same thing, but she distorted it. And here again, about 72 pieces in this single diamond.
That's incredible.
So very tiny. This one, Mariner's Quiltini by Pat Styring. Look how fine her points on her Mariner's compass are. They're just, it's like a very fine pencil. You know, Randy, there's a wonderful book that talks about all these miniature quilts. The Oh Wow Miniature Quilt Collection.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Because that's what people think when they see them. Oh, wow. But, you know, the locals really need to come down on second Saturdays and see these quilts in person.
Second Saturday. Now, that coincides with the Lower Town Walk, the gallery walk on second Saturdays.
Yes.
And the hours of that?
Oh, we're open until 9 on second Saturdays, and we have guided tours and other special events. So you can always check the paper to see what's going on at the Quilt Museum on second Saturdays.
That's great. It's a wonderful way of tying all the arts in the community
Yes.
together and have all this on one day. And I should mention that there's a trolley ride
Yes.
as well, right? That's free.
Yes. And riding the trolley, just ride it to ride it. It's fun, you know. Ride to the Quilt Museum, ride to Lower Town, come see the quilts, go to the galleries. I mean, gee, Saturday, that sounds like fun. Eat downtown, have a good time.
Mark your calendars.
There you
Saturday's
go.
the day.
Randy, listen to your mother.
Get out of that tree.
Stand up straight.
Put that down.
Watch out. You're going to poke someone's eye out with that.
You took all the good ones. What will the neighbors say?
There you go. This is a real humorous quilt. This is by Jean Ray Lowry, and it's called Listen to Your Mother. And she's just noted for having a real lighthearted approach to quilt making. We're just so pleased to have this one in our collection. She also has letters and words, the universal mother speaks. And really, I'm not a parent, but I think there comes a time in every parent's life where they say, oh my gosh, I just channeled my mother, or whatever.
Everyone can relate to this piece because
yeah.
they've either had it's either been said to them or they've said it.
Oh, definitely.
Or both.
Yeah. So we're real happy to have a piece that makes people laugh.
You know, it's interesting that it looks like it reminds me of a Crayola box because it's got that same mustard yellow colors,
Yes.
and the font looks
Paint box
very
colors.
close to that too.
And a comic strip. So it's like the Sunday Funnies.
It's very kid friendly.
Yeah, very.
Just don't touch.
Just don't touch it. Yeah, because if you do, you're going to poke someone's eye out.
Well, that should have been one of the quotes.
Yeah.
Don't touch this quilt.
Don't touch it. I'll tell her that if I ever see Jean Ray Lowry.
It's a great piece. We've got another one just around the corner.
Yes, we do.
Let's go check this one out.
Okay.
Too.
Randy, this is your namesake quilt.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
A little bit crazy, too. Ha!
My wife will agree with that one for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, no problem. This one is a wonderful quilt by Anna Williams. She's from Baton Rouge. And Anna doesn't use templates. She doesn't use rulers. She doesn't cut precision. She pieces what we call freely. So she might take this strip of fabric and just cut it, not measure it, but cut it, put the next strip on it, cut it, and she just freely pieces.
So no measuring.
No measuring. She's doing it all by eye. So yes, you do have some ripples at the bottom, but then if you look at the overall quilt, there's a really wonderful rhythm going on. She's done that with these diagonal sections. So it's got this, real rhythm going on. And that's fun.
Well, it sounds a little bit crazy.
Oh, takes one to know one, Randy.
So if this is a little bit crazy too, where's one?
Well, we don't have that. But you can be our crazy one.
All right, that sounds good to me. I'll be crazy one.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the flip side of this wall because we have one more to check out.
Oh, yes.
This is our next quilt we're going to look at, and what's interesting is I just noticed is that this is the only male quilt that I've seen so far.
Well, this is from a loaned exhibit. This is from Quilt National 05 Group B from the Dairy Barn, Southeastern Ohio Cultural Arts Center in Athens, Ohio. So there's a number of, we do have male quilters in our loaned exhibits. We do have male quilters in our own collection. This piece is discharged. So the original fabric is black, and he's bleached it to get the orange.
I thought it had a tie-dye look to it.
Yeah, so, and the whole series that he did on these, this is by Bob Adams of Lafayette, Indiana. His series evolved during harvest with all those earth colors that come up. But if you think about it, harvest, by the time harvest is over, there's earth colors, but there's less color, less of variety of hues.
Right.
So I think this really does speak to that.
Well, it does have that fall or that autumn kind of look to it.
Oh, yeah.
All the orange and the black, and you certainly think of Halloween when you see this piece. And it says Harvest Moons are the title, and I pick up on that with the circles. Looks like lunar phases at the bottom
yeah.
left-hand corner. Certainly the top right, balances that, and looks a little outer space-ish, if that's a word.
Yeah, definitely, out in the solar system. Well, one of the nice things about the quilts in the exhibits that we borrow is that over time there's something for everyone. And we have a commitment to classic quilting, we have a commitment to innovative quilting, and this is an innovative exhibit. And this really does show what drives quilting forward. And that's very, very important.
Well, what a wonderful quilt to end on with our tour here with Judy. I want to thank Judy for taking us on this tour in the Quilt Museum again.
Thank you, Randy.
And we do have one more stop to make, so I'm going to step aside. I'm now with Jessica Byassee, and we are standing in front of, believe it or not,
Yeah.
do you want to tell them?
It's a wooden quilt, hand carved and hand painted out of wood.
Check this out. I'm going to
Yeah.
step aside for a
Yeah.
second. Look at this.
And what's amazing is that it looks so soft. The way he created the folds, even the way it lays like a quilt would lay itself. We have people walk in here every day. They look for the wooden quilt and they can't find it. They look right at it and not realize that it's wooden.
It is absolutely incredible because it looks just like a quilt, and you do have a section of the quilt. If we can zoom in on this, and this was put out as a display for people to purposefully touch to show the damage that hands and the oil from skin can do to this wooden quilt if you were to touch it.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. Now, a lot of people, they may groan and moan a little bit about not being able to touch the quilts that are in the galleries, but, this really shows what would happen if you were able to touch the real quilts.
And it's really nasty, too.
Yeah.
So no licking the sample piece either, right?
Yeah, that's not really, it won't be tasty.
Okay. You want to talk about the auction that you do? It's an annual
Yeah,
auction
yeah.
here.
A lot of people, especially locals, are always wanting to find out a little bit more about what happens at the quilt show and a way that they can get involved. And we have a silent auction that runs Wednesday and Thursday of Quilt Week, as well as a live auction that runs the Thursday night of Quilt Show. And these are just a few examples of things that we get every year. We get a lot of quilting tools. We get baskets made up with fabric and books. Someone donated a quilting set of luggage. So it's just something that, that just about anybody can use. We also get a wide array of quilts, quilt tops. This quilt here was actually made by Schwender, the quilt that you just looked at, the Sedona Rose that had all the crystals on the back.
And we can touch this. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You can touch a little bit of that. No, not a lot, but you can touch a little bit.
Well, I'm not done licking the wood piece over there yet. Well, these are great, and these are donated by whom? Obviously, some of the artists.
By some of the artists, quilters, quilt guilds from all over the U.S., actually some foreign countries also, and a lot of quilting businesses.
So you raise funds with the auctioning of these items, and the money goes to?
To our, the running of the museum, for just our general fund, yes. Now, we also have art cards that are actually quilted postcards that you can buy in the gift shop, and those are $30, and we sell those to raise money for acquisitions funds so we can purchase more quilts. Yeah, you can just write on the back and mail them right in.
Oh, that is so neat.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that information with us. I believe that does our visit here. I mean, we just got started and we're already ending. Yeah. So I do want to thank Jessica for talking with us, and definitely Judy, our wonderful host. Thanks a lot, and I really foresee that we'll be back again and talk in the future. So thanks for having us.
No problem.
And I am Randy Simmons for Eye on Arts, and thanks for letting us into your homes tonight.